C-Tag Studios proudly presents the Almost Daily Zencast. Live on Sprecher.com. Archives available on YouTube. I am your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. First things first, I really want to express my gratitude to you, dear listener. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to me ramble. Let's get started. First of all, who am I? Who are you? And what is this podcast all about? I am the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Of course, that is a pseudonym. And there's a story, a backstory as to why I have chosen that pseudonym. But for now, suffice it to say that I am, just like you, a concerned human being, a member of the human species, and someone with an opinion about what's going on in our world. Who are you? You, my dear listener, well, you're you. And I'm me, right? And these are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about. Transcendentalism and how it applies to our postmodern life. I'm inviting you to listen to me ramble. Why? Because I have a lot to say. Now, that doesn't mean I think I'm better than anybody. That doesn't mean I think I'm right and you're wrong. That means I want to know what you think. That's what I'm about conversation. Of course, this is a one-way broadcast, but I want it to be as interactive as possible. That's why I invite you to find me on all social media. If you're on some social media platform I've never heard of, let me know. Send me an invitation. But you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just type in Mr. Zeppo. No period. If you've never heard of me, you might want to go check out my social media to see where my basic frame of reference comes from, or starts with. It'll help explain a lot of the things I'm going to talk about. So yeah, this is my very first episode. I kind of re-engineered how I want to produce this little project. And I'm welcoming your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions about how to move forward, about what else to talk about. This being the very first episode, it might be clumsy, it might be rambly, it might be boring. I may not be as eloquent as I would like to be, but it's not about being perfect, right? It's about putting in the effort to try and achieve a vision. What's my vision? I would like to share with the world the conclusions that I've come to after paying attention to what's going on around us for the last 30 years, to see if anybody else out there is on the same wavelength. I'm also trying to build a brand. My aspiration, my goal in life is to do this professionally. I want to be one of those talking heads on CNN and MSNBC, bringing a particular perspective to that national dialogue that I think has been ignored for quite some time. Now, what is that perspective? This is why I opened with, who am I? I want to know who you are, so write in and tell me. I've created a special email just for this show, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo at gmail.com. Link is in my profile. Now, many people might be wondering, where is this going and where is this guy starting from? What does he mean by transcendentalism? And how does that apply to my life today? That's going to be the broad theme of this podcast. But today, I wanted to start with the elephant in the room. But before we get to the elephant in the room, I have a few programming announcements. I am very excited to announce that I'm going to be revamping my meditation series. If you're a longtime listener or follower of my social media, you might remember that I have a small little meditation guide, Meditation 101. I'm going to be revamping that and re-releasing it, so stay tuned for that. I'm also launching a brand new segment called Unauthorized and Explicit Book Readings. I'm going to be reading from a selection of books that I find powerful, significant, poignant, and meaningful. And I'm going to explain why I feel they are important today. It's called Unauthorized and Explicit because I do not have commercial permission to address, to read from these books. I'm going to be doing it without permission, of course, because I'm starting with a budget of $0. But I'm sure that the authors of the books I've chosen would appreciate that people are talking about their books and sharing them. To compensate for the fact that I don't have any kind of deal with any of these authors, I just encourage you to go get their books. More on that soon. So stay tuned for Unauthorized Explicit Book Readings with me, the incorrigible Mr. Zappo. I will also be launching a focused segment called Cannabis Talk. I'm headquartered here in Southern California, and for all of you fellow Californians, we have much to discuss as we enter this new era of cannabis being recreationally available to us. So if you're interested in cannabis culture, in cannabis business, hit me up. A final programming note. This whole thing is supposed to be like a talk show. It's an opinion-based talk show, okay? So if you want to be a guest on the show, shoot me an email. If you want to have a particular subject addressed in a future episode, hit me up. All right, so the elephant in the room. The national elephant, President Trump. We are now in day 28 of a new era. A truly new time in human history. And we are currently living out the making of history. I've been jokingly referring to this new era as the era of Trumptopia. Welcome to Trumptopia, folks. Regardless of anybody's opinion, Donald J. Trump is the President of the United States of America. And for this episode, I'm going to be digging deep, but also stepping back. I've noticed that, of course, it's obvious that the American public is really divided. It's really churned up over this presidency. He's controversial, to say the least. Let's not get bogged down in the argument over the minutia, right? I'm not here to endorse or to critique him in traditional political terms. I'm here to invite you to zoom back and look at this situation from a larger perspective. We can get lost in the day-to-day grind of the insanity. As a matter of fact, I did just now sort of get totally consumed. I originally intended to start broadcasting these audio podcasts earlier in January. But New Year's Day, the whole period from the election leading up to the inauguration and these 28 days since then has been mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. And I reserved the right to just sit back and not launch this new series until I really sort of had wrapped my brain around what's going on. Now, those of you who know me, who have been fans or friends on social media for a while, you know that I have a very unique and unusual opinion. I'm not alone in this opinion, but it's not an opinion that gets brought forth into the mainstream discourse, which is why I'm doing this. And here it is. Here's the opinion that I think a lot of people in the mainstream are going to find difficult to rally behind at first. And that's that none of this is arbitrary. None of this is accidental. As a transcendentalist, as a mystic, some people might understand what I'm saying better if they think of me as a Buddhist. I'm not, technically. I don't belong to any one school of thought or any one organization. But understanding that our postmodern life is based on illusions, lies, and that is true on many levels. So transcendentalism. I use that word a lot, and I know that it's sort of loaded. There was a transcendentalism political party for a while, which was exposed as a sort of cult. And I think some people might jump to that conclusion. I'm not part of that, and I do not endorse any of those groups that are sort of misusing the word. I'd love to find a new word for what I'm trying to represent, but let's stick with transcendentalism. Besides the baggage that it might be associated with, it's about transcendence. Let's get down to the center of that. What are we transcending? Well, everything. From ideology to the commonplace notion of who and what we are. What does that have to do with Donald Trump? Everything. Absolutely everything. So where to begin? First and foremost, I want to be very clear about this. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I have no direct affiliation to any political party at this time. I love America, but I also love the world and all of the people on it. And I refuse to hate Donald Trump. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not a supporter. I do not agree, and I applaud everyone out there in the media, whether it's mainstream or alternative, that's trying to analyze and critique his presidency. That's not what I'm going to get bogged down in. If you want that, you've got it all over the place, from MSNBC to Fox News to anywhere else. I'm trying to push through to the larger perspective. Okay? I don't hate Donald Trump. I don't hate Obama. I don't hate Clinton. I don't hate any politician. I also do not accept their bullshit. So let's make this following idea very clear. I'm not here to propose that one politician is going to be better than the other, or that one political idea is going to solve the problems, because they're not. All of politics is theater. Now, I'm going to lose a lot of followers or listeners here, but politics is theater because it's the overt public face of the system of oppression that's profiteering on our lives. This is not unique to the United States of America. This is a worldwide problem. Now, some countries have got it sorted out a little bit better than others, and they're really sort of pushing out the professional politicians and trying to replace them with genuine people really interested in doing the work required to organize society for the better good of all people. But most politicians, especially traditional, professional, lifelong politicians, it can be said have been corrupted, have been hijacked. The political system, especially here in the United States, operates as a tool of division and distraction and oppression. You can see it when you step away from identity politics and really just watch the Republicans and the Democrats fight at each other over the politicians that they believe in, pretty much doing the exact same things as everybody else has done. What do I mean by that? Obama is praised by his fans for being the best president we've had in living history. And yes, he did some wonderful things. He also dropped more bombs from drones onto people that may or may not have been deserving of being bombed than any modern president in history. But no one wants to hear that. Right? None of the Obama supporters want to hear that. Clinton supporters didn't want to hear about her flaws either. Just like Trump supporters now are clinging to their adoration to this guy and not really recognizing all the crazy things that he's doing. Why is that? As I commented on some conversation or another on Facebook recently, and as I think I've already said in this podcast today, there's a cult of personality thing going on. I recently said, I added the word syndrome to it, and people were asking me if that's, an official medical term. And of course it's not. But if you think about it, just think about it. Look at the hardcore followers. They adore him. Right? It's this adoration and blind faith that I'm talking about when I say cult of personality syndrome. So, what can we do about it? Arguing with those people will not help. Okay? It just engages us, those of us who see clearly, those of us who don't like Trump or whatever, engages us in the very divisiveness that is part of the program. Divide and conquer, my friends, has always been the agenda. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Even the really good guys like Bernie Sanders, God bless it, he's playing their game. I'm not trying to accuse Sanders of being corrupt. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything other than what it is on the surface, and that's that politics keeps us distracted and arguing. Look at the language that's used in politics. You got to fight for your rights. Let's break that down for one hot second. We got to what? We got to fight for our rights. Against whom? Who are we fighting? Our own government? Our brothers and sisters in humanity? But they're people too, right? So why are we fighting them? I posted a long time ago a meme that reads, "We blame society, but we are society." I'm sure I'm not the first person to have said that. But it's a reminder that we can't just blame others for the problems that we face. We need to unify and organize to solve the problems. If we just sat around blaming each other, the problems would persist. That's, we see that. We've seen that our whole lives. The problems persist. We're still arguing about the same things in American politics that they were arguing 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Arguing these things is not the same as solving them. Solving our problems will only be achieved when we transcend the argument. So, on the surface of things, on the surface of Trump is a politician. Let's talk about that for a hot second. Is he categorically different than any other politician? In my honest opinion, and I've been paying attention to him for the last year and a half, he's no different than any other politician other than style. His style, his surface, glamour is that of a non-politician. But he's a politician. And he makes the kind of pandering promises that all politicians make. And then once he's in, now that he's in office, he's trying to walk them back, turn them around, flip them inside out. I think the best thing you can say about Trump is that he's just an amateur politician, but a politician nonetheless. And what do politicians do? They make promises and then get into office and they realize that they're bound by the system. So they got to do what the system requires of them. Let's not even waste time discussing his business life. He's crazy. He's a scam artist. He's but Try to tell that to a Trump supporter and they won't see it. Why? In large part because American corporatism culture is endorsing those sorts of activities. You gotta, to be number one in business, it's like war. There are no rules. We applaud those who get away with the most. Trump is a Christian. Let's look at that. Is he a Christian? He says he is. He claims to love the Bible like no other book, but he couldn't name any of his favorite, passages. In these three areas, it is clear that he's a scam artist, that he's a liar, that he pretends to be whatever he needs to pretend to be in order to get the attention that he seeks. Now, let's strip those things away and remember that he is a human being. You're a human being, I'm a human being, right? We can't dehumanize him. If we do that, then our attempts to resist him will be encumbered by our own act of dehumanizing him. We have to remember that he is a human being. Why is that important? I'll get to that in a second. But just ponder it for a minute. He is a human being like the rest of us. All right? And so are his cabinet appointees. They're just people. It's their jobs and their ideology that we have a problem with, right? The bankers, they're profiteers. The generals, they are warmongers. The billionaires, they are kleptocrats. Some people don't want to see that, and we just need to keep gently showing them, gently nudging them and pointing them in the right direction to see it. These people are going to show their true colors. They already are. The bankers are going to want to break down all the laws and regulations that keep them from taking advantage of us. The generals are going to want to send us to war. And the billionaires are going to want to take as much as they can for themselves. That's what profiteers, warmongers, and kleptocrats do. It's really important to understand that he's not doing this for the little guy. They aren't doing this for you and me as Americans or as human beings. They are doing it for themselves to satisfy their own ego. Because they're human beings. And our society is an ego-driven society. One of the essential things that needs to be understood by everybody on all sides of this is that they're getting away with it because we are arguing with each other instead of holding them accountable. This is the problem behind the problems. It's the us versus them mentality. All right? Us versus them mentality or brainwashing is really essential to the sort of sociological cult of personality syndrome. We love this guy because he's awesome and everybody else is bad. No matter what we do, we are righteous. Everyone else is evil. We see it. It's clear in the Trump fans. In true hardcore Trumptopians, as I like to call them, the rest of the world is wrong. And Trump might as well be the second coming of Jesus Christ. There are actually people who think that. Now, if we get angry at them and start thinking the same way, that they're all crazy and insane and they're all dead wrong and we are right and justice and righteous, then we're not doing anything different than they are. We're falling for the same us versus them dichotomy. We have to transcend that, because if we don't, we're just being controlled. Politics is ideological mind control. Always has been. So is religion, but we'll talk about that in another episode. So if politics is ideological mind control, but it is also the system by which we organize ourselves nationally, what is the right thing to do next to solve the problems that we see in our politics? We must liberate our minds. What do I mean by that? I mean by that the kind of thing that Gandhi or Buddha, or dare I even say his name, Mohammed, was talking about. Jesus. They were all talking about liberating our minds from ideology. Don't believe me? That's fine. This is my opinion based on 20-some-odd years of being fascinated by religion and its history. Let me give you, my breakdown on all that. Societal systems like religion, politics, and even just cultural identity mechanisms like race, they're constructs. They are ideas. I know that's a touchy subject right now because there's a lot of racial tension in America. Before we can solve that problem, we have to recognize that race is completely made up. It was invented as an ideological construct by people who wanted to subjugate other people, by creating a false division and saying, you are inferior to me because of these details. But that's just complete foolhardy nonsense. Anybody who believes in that is subjugating themselves and letting the ideological mind control in and, take over. I respect people of all races. Why? Because I know personally through direct experience that we are no different from each other than leaves of different colors on the same tree. Imagine a tree. And I say this to people all the time. I share this analogy a lot. And if you like it, I want you to share it to others too. Imagine a tree with talking leaves during fall. Different leaves, different colors. You've got two leaves on a branch. One still has a lot of green in it. The other one's almost ready to fall off the branch. And you can hear them talking. They're arguing over what the differences mean, and they're arguing over the existence of the roots of the tree. From your perspective, that sounds like nonsense, right? They're both leaves, and they're both on the same tree. They are not different. But they perceive each other as different, and they fail to perceive the thing that connects them. That's what's going on with us as a species. Now, we're going to delve into that more in future episodes, but I wanted to address it and introduce it here in relation to politics and ideological constructs. If you're a long-standing fan, you know what my solution or what my proposed answer to all of this is, but we're going to get to it in just a second. And if you are new and you don't know, I hope that this intrigues you and you want to find out what my answer is. But we have to be clear. We cannot solve any of our problems of this postmodern society until we liberate our minds from the ideological constructs that we just take for granted and assume are normal. Okay? Race is a lie. Pluck any two human beings off the planet and analyze them scientifically. They will be 99.99999999999% genetically identical. Yes, we can find all kinds of differentiation in our genetics, but we are one species, one family. And if you look at the human species from a transcendental perspective, we are one being with many facets. And each facet is experiencing this illusion of separateness, like the leaves in my analogy. All right, let's zoom back to politics and our current situation. It's February 16th, 2017. And we are overwhelmed as people by what's going on in our country, right? politically. It's a madhouse. It's crazy. It's insane. No one is quite sure what to do next about it. But to really get a grip and a handle and a foothold on the beginning of a solution, we have to understand that Trump is a human being, a member of our species, a brother to us as individuals, and another facet of ourselves as a unity. And he is fulfilling a function. Now, I'm not talking about in the pragmatic sense. We can get into the pragmatic debate about, what the president is and why this president has to be the way he is. But I'm zooming back to a spiritual place. I'm not religious. I don't belong to any particular religion, but I have studied them all. Just like I've investigated various worldview theories about why we're here and what the purpose is. I suggest to you, my friends, my listeners, even my opponents who want to debate with me, that it is important that we look at Trump as a symbol, a spiritual symbol for us to contemplate. Why? Because that is the way the universe works, in my humble opinion. The universe is a really strange, mysterious place. And people will want to try to debunk the following statement, but I assure you that the science is there to back it up. The universe is a fractal hologram being projected from the unity of consciousness that is the consciousness observing it all. As Rumi put it, we are looking for God, but God is the one looking. I don't want to open the can of worms to debate God. The God that we've been taught in religions, and I don't care which religion you think is right and which religions you think are wrong, all religions were hijacked a long-ass time ago. And I'm going to make that the subject of a very specific episode, but I want to just lay that out there for right now. I get the counter-argument, but, there's so much good done by religions. Yeah. I know, that's their cover. I had this debate with a family member recently. They were disgruntled with my criticism of the Catholic Church because they're a big supporter of the Catholic Church. They are involved in, charitable works for the Catholic Church. And that's all fine and great. But when you zoom back and look at the Catholic Church as an organization as a whole in its history, those positive things that they contribute do not compensate for the terrible things that they have done and continue to do. That's the lesson that we face. See, to the best of my understanding, if you dig into the core of what each prophet taught in any religion, you find the same things. Love, compassion, meditation, prayer, transcendence. You may disagree and think that I'm crazy in saying this, but I've done the research. It's there, deep in the roots of every religion. I'm not just talking about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. We forget that these are just 3 out of many religions in the world that exist now, and out of many even more religions that no longer exist. The human being, as a species, is a spiritual creature. And yes, even agnosticism and atheism are a kind of spirituality. And like I said, we'll get into those topics a little bit deeper. But I want to bring this back to the politics and the Trump thing here, right? Just accept that my argument is valid, if you can. We are all one. The universe is a hologram, a fractal, an expression of the divine being experiencing our lives. Think of it this way. We are each like a movie camera for God, filming a little movie. And God's watching each of our movies all at once. Now, this seems impossible to prove, and everybody out there wants proof. We will address these issues and how to experience that more directly in other episodes, but I just want to lay it down for the groundwork for my final argument about what is going on in America today. I can't prove to you this divinity thesis I just expressed, but I can show you how you can directly experience it. That'll be the subject of a future episode. But once we experience that and acknowledge that this might be the case, that we might literally be all the dream of God, then we can take a look at what's going on in our current pragmatic real-life situation and interpret it in a completely different way. Trump is a symbol, as we all are. There's an ancient saying that we are all mirrors of each other. That's difficult to swallow sometimes because we encounter individuals that drive us crazy, that upset us, that hurt our feelings. And to contemplate them as mirrors of ourselves can be painful. Definitely challenging. But let's take a look at what he is. He's a bully. He's an egocentric person. He's thin-skinned. He's greedy. And he's power-hungry. Why? How is that a symbol for ourselves? Because that is what our culture is all about. You are number one. Everybody else is a loser. You got to look out for yourself first, not everybody else, right? This is a Christian nation that's obsessed with guns, that's comfortable with violence, and that rejects love as a solution to the problems that we face. Think about that for a minute. Trump is there to shake things up, to alert us. Not him, not his mind, not his ego mind. His ego mind would reject this. If I had Trump on as a guest on this show, which would be awesome, I would love it. But if I had Trump on as a guest and I said to him respectfully, Mr. President, you are a symbol for the narcissistic, self-destructive, egocentric, power-hungry, profiteering issue that we have as a species, I'd be curious to know how he would respond. But his ego mind would reject it, I'm sure. He might even have me arrested. Who knows? He's a kind of interestingly crazy president. But I would love to have the opportunity to sit down and explain that to him and then meditate with him. I wonder if he claims to be spiritual, and most presidents have some kind of spiritual advisor. It would be awesome to randomly find myself in the position to be his spiritual advisor. Okay, what am I trying to say here? I got to wrap it up. I've got 7 minutes left. If Trump is a symbol for the disease that the human being as a species is suffering, then we must find the solution, the way to heal that disease, not just in him, but in all of us. That's why Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's why Jesus said, when you do something unto the least of your brothers, you do it to me. Christianity is very deeply transcendental, but it's, no one realizes that because all the transcendental stuff has been minimalized and marginalized. Here's why. Really quickly, by the way, for those of you wondering why I dare claim that religion was hijacked. A long, long time ago, the people who were the corporate war profiteers of their era, while their corporations looked very different and war looked very different, they discovered and they realized, and I'm talking centuries ago, before the Tower of Babel, they realized that humanity was eventually going to achieve species-wide enlightenment. There's evidence to this, and we can dig really deep in future episodes, but just hear me out on this. So we were living in an era that's been lost to common history today because it's part of the agenda to not help us realize what all this stuff was going on back then, what it meant or what it means to us now. So a group of powerful and greedy people realized that if humanity healed itself and achieved enlightenment and moved on to the next level, they could no longer profiteer. They could no longer gather wealth and power for themselves. So, because they were already powerful and wealthy, they hijacked society. They hijacked religions. They hijacked everything they could hijack and began a propaganda agenda of isolating us from our enlightenment. Now, the funny thing is that they had to, not because they were right to do so, but because it's part of the lesson. Again, we'll talk about this in future episodes, but we are not here randomly. We are here to learn the lesson of ego versus ascension. There are always these two options in every choice we make. Do we choose to fall down the ego trap and stay stuck here in the material world, repeating our ego trap mistakes? The endless loop of violence and greed and profiteering? Or do we choose ascension? Do we choose to transcend our ego and our identity in order to achieve enlightenment, right? So I argue that Trump is there to shock us into contemplating these things at the cosmic level, at the spiritual level. And that whenever we face a great darkness, an overwhelming evil, it is there to bring out the light within us. My time's almost running out, but I will resume these topics in another episode as soon as possible. I want you to contemplate and question and, throw your comments at me about everything I just rambled about. And I want to thank you for listening. I know that this was, not the highest quality podcast you've probably heard, but I do think that the content is worth discussing and sharing. So I hope you'll share and tell others about it. I will be live on Sprecher.com, and you'll be able to find my stuff on Facebook and other social media platforms. Thanks again. And remember, to solve the problems, we have to dig deep within ourselves. We have to transcend our own ideology. We have to liberate our minds. A wise man once said, before a revolution can play out in the streets, the revolution must happen in the mind. So I add to that, meditation is the ultimate act of resistance. Well, that's my time, folks. I'll be back as soon as possible to talk at more length about all this. But in the meantime, please send me your comments, send me your questions, send me your critique. Just don't send me your hate. Because think about it. If you send hate, how are you contributing to the solution? The solution is love, my friends. Now, that doesn't mean we need to blindly love all those assholes out there doing horrible, horrible things. No, not in the traditional sense of just like accepting them and letting them get away with it. That's not what we mean by love. But we'll dig even deeper about that in future episodes. It's never enough time, is it? Well, thanks again. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. And tell your friends about this show. Until next time, this has been your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Oh, final note. I'm looking for co-hosts and guests and people to interview. So, inbox me if you're interested. I'm in Southern California physically, so if you are in the SoCal area, Orange County, LA County, Riverside County, and you're willing to drive a bit, hit me up. Thanks again. Peace out, folks. Be good human beings. Love each other. Love yourselves. That's where it starts, by the way. The liberation of self begins with learning to love oneself. Sending you all lots of peace, love, and positive energy. Until next time. Thanks for listening.